Hey, what's up? It's Bon. Let's talk about Mass Effect. And today I am going to talk about what the worst case scenario, quote unquote, for the next Mass Effect game could be and why that would still be okay. If you like Mass Effect, if you like video game news, speculation, reviews in general, please subscribe to this channel. If you end up liking this video, please hit that like, thumbs up, whatever you want to call it. And down in the comments, let me know what you think, or just say hello. Okay, so worst case scenario for the next Mass Effect game. For me personally, I'm not saying this is objective. This is my personal take. When I think about what the worst case scenario is for the next game, here's kind of where I'm going. It primarily takes place in Andromeda. We go back to Andromeda primarily. We maybe do have Milky Way involvement, and it's because at the end of Andromeda, we have the Meridian, and it opens up all these new possibilities. And maybe there's time travel, maybe there's some type of super relay that technology allows them to build. But one way or the other, we're able in the next game to send people from Andromeda to the Milky Way and back extremely quickly, thus integrating the two galaxies significantly. We play as the Ryder twins again. We pick one of them and we continue their journey. The Kett are one of the main antagonists, along with the Leviathans. The Angara are the only new species we meet in the next game, new being in quotes, in that they're being integrated into the Milky Way now, that they can travel there easily. And they have made none of the endings matter from Mass Effect 3, and Shepard is dead and mostly forgotten in this game. So there it is. There's my worst case scenario for the next Mass Effect game. I don't want it to heavily involve Andromeda. Mike Gamble has made it pretty clear that at the very least Andromeda isn't forgotten. But there is a weird juxtaposition in that it seems like most of the media we've seen so far, albeit limited, about the next Mass Effect is the 2020 trailer, was showing Liara and all of that, the 2021 poster, and the 2022 teaser thing, and a bunch of concept art, as well as some words and some really old art people have found, which probably isn't relevant anymore. All of that stuff to me has suggested the Milky Way is the primary location of the next game. But Mike Gamble keeps, and he hasn't in a while now, but pretty consistently was teasing Andromeda and the Milky Way, was seemingly making it very clear that Andromeda would not be forgotten. So maybe that is just in reference, maybe the Andromeda mission, or maybe they'll begin working towards like an Andromeda 2 with this next game. Maybe that comes later. Or maybe it's the setting of the next game in my quote-unquote worst case scenario. We play as the Ryder twins again. I don't think this is likely, but it is worth pointing out that I believe it was the 2020 trailer where there is a human figure in the back of part of that trailer that sure looks like they're wearing Initiative armor, which as far as we know wasn't present in the Milky Way, though it wouldn't surprise me at all if in the next game we find out that the Initiative and the post-Reaper War, whatever companies or organizations were helping fund and supply the Initiative, very well may have been maybe selling their own tech in the Milky Way also. So the idea that, Andromeda style suits and armor could be in the Milky Way in the next game isn't that weird, because it all would have originated there anyways. So, but maybe not. Maybe that is Ryder in the background of that trailer, and we're doing some type of thing where Ryder can be the main character again. It's not the end of the world. I personally find the Ryder twins to be extremely weak main characters. Maybe with some bias, maybe it's because of who I am. I thought Alec Ryder would have been a way more interesting character to start off our journey in Andromeda instead of killing them off immediately. Spoilers, I guess. But the Ryders the writers do, in theory, have a lot more to give. There's a lot more of their story to tell. You know, at the end of Andromeda, again, spoilers, you find out that their mother is still in like cryogenic stasis, and that, you know, she could still be a part of the game and be a character in the game if they can cure whatever disease she was suffering from. Even though Alec is like gone for sure. I could handle the Ryder twins being the main characters again. In my order of what I want, number one, I want to play as Shepard again. Number two, I'd want to play as like a fresh N7 graduate who can kind of set their own story and background, but you still have the specter, no pun intended, of Shepard over any N7 and really any Alliance soldier, and any human, and really anyone in the galaxy. You know, Shepard is, you know, still going to be an influential figure, even if it's just in reputation. And then third, my preference would be the Ryder twins, but I still think they could work, especially if it's a game that takes place in Andromeda. I think that they would almost have to work, but we'll have to wait and see. The Ket and the Leviathans being the main antagonists, I would really hate this so much, because I think the Ket in Andromeda were just such a hilariously generic and lame enemy, and their character designs are awful. They look so bad. They're just so like unimaginative to me. I really despise everything about the Ket because they're just so boring and generic. They're just like the generic bad guy aliens, and they're almost just like a B movie version of the Reapers, and of, you know, they're in many ways like where they're turning the species they run into themselves. Like, it's just basically feels like a rehash of the Reapers. So I would really hate that. I want to see the next Mass Effect be almost like a political kind of thing, where there isn't like any one group that's really the bad guys. It's more of a big power struggle in the post-Reaper War galaxy, and universe, I guess, of, you know, the Citadel Council. Their reach would be hampered and damaged by the Reaper War. And so while they try to reestablish that reach and control, it would be interesting to see them face off maybe with multiple groups that would be considered antagonists to the story, or they could become allies, or they could, you know, they can be more complicated than just being the bad guys. I think that would be a better route to go. The Leviathans, as much as I like that DLC in Mass Effect 3, the Leviathans actually kind of screw up a lot of lore and kind of don't make sense in a lot of ways. And so I think you have to at least acknowledge them in the universe moving forward. But I kind of hope with the Leviathans, they kind of just say, and they disappeared into nowhere. One thing I've talked about with the Leviathans is that in theory, they're millions of years old, like many, many millions. And so even if the current Citadel Council species exists for another 100,000 years, to the Leviathans, that's kind of a blink to them. And so you could, you know, argue that the Leviathans wouldn't really be involved, because there's a pretty good chance that all of the Citadel species won't be around for another 100,000 years, just because of how things go. And so if they reintroduce them, I guess that'd be fine. Maybe the right story can make that work, but it very much just seems like, okay, here's the Reapers again, but they're organic this time. And then, yeah, with the Ket, I can't imagine. I would rather just have another new generic alien race to fight than them. I really felt like they're half-baked. The Angara being the only new quote-unquote species we would meet in the next game, I think would be quite a bummer. I think that the Angara they're actually fairly interesting. I think that they are like, if they ever do an Andromeda 2, I think the Angara can be kind of rehabbed a little bit to be more interesting. I really hope if they're ever introduced back into the series, that they get a complete, or at least a significant redesign. I really believe the Angara have one of the worst alien designs I've ever seen, especially within the Mass Effect universe, where so many of the aliens have these designs that seem like fairly realistic and whatever. And this is gonna sound really dumb, but like the beady eyes thing, where like Turians have like kind of beady eyes, even Solarians have like kind of large, you know, features, but they still don't look completely. They look like they could work. Where the Angara just look like weird cat ape reptiles, and they just look like a rejected design from like a cartoon. Like they don't look grounded in the Mass Effect universe, where even the Ket at least kind of did. The Angara just are these weird, and their coloring is awful. Like I can't stand. And I actually like the characters in the Angaran species in Andromeda, but I really, just from the bottom of my heart, hate their design. I hate their little hips and their legs that don't look like they could support their bodies, and their like awkwardly broad shoulders, and their weird head things, and their eyes that just look weird. I really hate the Angara. So my worst case scenario would be that they would be like the only new thing introduced in the next game, potentially like in the Milky Way. Instead, I would really like to see some of the alien species that we already know are in the known trilogy universe that we just never saw during the game. So like you have a species like the Ralloy, which are these like bird people, like even more so than the Turians. Like they just straight up look like birds. But due to an illness that happened when they came to the Citadel, and then so they kind of backed away from the Citadel in that point. But then when the Reapers came, the Ralloy were actually one of the species that returned to their home planet and destroyed all of their advanced technology, the ability to be in space and things like that, hoping that would make the Reapers leave them alone. A big, or maybe just a small thing in the next game would be to find out what happened to the Ralloy. Did their plan to get rid of their spacefaring ability save them from the Reapers? I bet it didn't, but we'll have to wait and find out. And I guess there's a bunch of other species that are supposed to be living on the Citadel that we never saw in the trilogy, or for that matter in Andromeda. And that's interesting because I'm sure it was a tech limitation. They just could only, in the first game especially, they could only afford to have so many species in their game, right? Models and stuff like that. So I would like to see that, and I would actually personally like to see a First Contact protocol in the next Mass Effect game. My whole theory is that, like, okay, in the post Reaper War universe, everyone's desperate, and so maybe in that 2022 trailer, when Liara talks about how humans are, they're going to do whatever they want, even if the council gets mad at them. I've wondered if maybe the idea is that there's humans, that there's maybe human groups looking to start up dormant relays to go to new places in the galaxy. And if that happens, that would open up the possibility for First Contact protocols, because the First Contact protocols, it kind of gets explored with the Ket in Andromeda, but we don't see it before that in the trilogy. And then the First Contact protocol with the Angarans are in Andromeda was just like completely skipped over, at least for the most part. So it would be cool in the next game if they could introduce some more alien types by showing us some new planets and new systems that we've never been to before, by opening up new relays in this desperate attempt for help or resources or whatever by the known Citadel Council species. So, and that's kind of it. So like my whole thing is I have a pretty clear game in my brain that I want this next Mass Effect to be. I've also accepted that that's not going to happen, especially not my perfect scenario. I would like for at least some of the things that I want to happen. That would be super cool. And I think they probably will, at least a few of them. But what I've really come down to is that even, this worst case scenario I talked about in this video, even if they do all of those things, if they make this next game with passion, if they make it with, creativity and seriousness, I think that even the worst case scenario could still be a super good game. Like, they don't have to do everything I want for it to be a good game. I would obviously love that, but I'm not anticipating that. And I'm actually anticipating them to do mostly things I don't want, or things I couldn't even think of. So that's where I'll leave that. Let me know what you think about the video. Let me know what you think maybe your best case scenario or your worst case scenario for the next Mass Effect game is. Let me know what you think about my ideas and my kind of conclusion there. I would be curious to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me all over the internet as Bond Diesel, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, wherever else, Twitter. You can also check out my podcast that I put out weekly. That's a gaming news and discussion podcast. It's right here on this YouTube channel. It's also on all podcast platforms. So it's the EchoCast. You can look that up. And that's all I have for this one. So until next time.